And joining us now with more on that and the other top political headlines of the week, if we can get to them, the host of the WGN Political Report, Paul Lisnek.
Good luck with that.
I know, so much to sort of unpack here. Let's start with that. It's one thing to disagree on diplomacy in a wartime here, but this was publicly unreal. Did it seem to you like a provocation that maybe started when Vice President Vance sort of inserted himself into that conversation?
Well, as you know, I try to look at everything from both sides, right? And so the way I would see this, and this is not one where I can simply say Republicans think and Democrats think. I think this is about Trump supporters and those who support Ukraine. Could be the same, but not always. And I think what you saw here was with regard to the Trump supporter side, they saw a strong president and a strong vice president making their points, doing what they needed to do. And also, part of this would be that you saw some signals that we're probably going to leave Ukraine in this situation. I don't know that we were ever not going to do that. I mean, I think everybody would expect that that's the way Trump was handling it. But if you are somebody who supports Ukraine, you saw something very different today. I think what you saw was something arguably that looked set up. Why would I say set up? Because vice presidents and other people do not step on the toes of a president. You just don't do that. And the fact that you didn't have President Trump say, hey, JD, you have something to say? No, Vance chimed in almost at a moment that it was set to do it, and he started it. And then Trump picked up on it. Now, again, those who support Trump will say, yeah, but Zelensky was the rude one and never. It didn't look that way to me. It looked to me like, well, he said some things like, what have you done and when have you come to Ukraine and all that. What you really saw was clearly an attack that was not going to go down.
So you think this was a strategy?
I think it very well could have been a strategy, mainly because, as I say again, you don't step on the toes of a president. And the fact that he did that, unchallenged, made me think something was planned on that. Look, Putin is not popular in this country. The recent poll showed 81% of Americans do not favor him, but Trump does have popular support in the country. So how will people side? We'll see. It's going to be very interesting, by the way, Tuesday night, because Trump will talk about this in his, what's not called the State of the Union, your first year, his statement to a joint session of Congress. But be interested to see how Democrats react and how much support he gets from Republicans. This did give Republicans an out. Those who don't want to support Ukraine or want to, but don't think they can under Trump, what happened today is their way of saying, we saw it in Lindsey Graham in Jenna's piece. This is the way for Republicans to say, he's got to go, Zelensky's got to go, this can't be. Lindsey Graham wasn't saying that just a few hours before that. So this is the cover that Republicans will need if they want to take the president's position, which I think ultimately will be to leave Ukraine to fend for itself.
I think right now this is the moment where everybody's kind of in shock, and all they're talking about is what they saw at that press conference. But we need to go a step further and see what's this going to do for the future of getting peace between Ukraine and Russia. Will Zelensky have to leave? Will he have to step down? Or will there be
the mineral rights?
For one thing, the mineral rights deal was supposed to be signed today, and of course he was asked to leave. That's been reported by some media that Zelensky didn't say, I'm out of here. He was asked to leave, and we saw Trump, Truth from his Truth Social that basically said he's not ready to talk peace. He needs to go, essentially. The mineral deal, they were prepared to sign that. That is something the U.S. wants, but we'll see. But I think, Jackie, the best way to sort of look at what's going on here, you heard a little bit in Quigley's comment there, which things have changed. The entire world order has changed. Earlier in the week, there was a UN resolution which condemned Russia for its invasion 3 years ago of Ukraine. Who voted against it? The United States and Russia. And North Korea. That just doesn't happen, right? So what's happening is there's a change in the world order. It's a frightening thing to see, but there is a change in the world order happening. Once again, I understand the Trump view of America first, and we have to put America out there, but this is moving into a category of America alone, America on its own, unless you want to count Russia and North Korea within that category. It's just not the way America has defined itself in the past, but I guess we're going to see how things move along in the future. But the issue is certainly going to be, can a deal be struck? And if it's going to be struck, I think Europe's going to play the key player here. It won't necessarily be the U.S., it's going to be Europe. By the way, did you see how Europe played up to Trump this week? Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, Germany, England, Britain, the Prime Minister, we're going to have you and Melania back for the second state dinner. We've never done this in the history of the country. Look, world leaders know they need to play up to Trump. I'm sorry. He wants praise. You got to do it. They learned to do it. Germany was the same thing. Mr. Trump, you're so incredible. you're amazing. But it works for him. Zelensky wasn't having that. Zelensky was accused, by the way, of you've never said thank you. That's how Vance started this. You've never said thank
Which he did so many times in the past.
We can run tape for an hour that shows all the times, including his appearance in front of a joint session of Congress, where he said thank you and thank you and thank you. That just wasn't true. But
He just meant for today.
he probably meant now. Right now, where's the thank you?
Yeah.
And again, a Trump supporter would say, that's right, he should have said thank you now. All right, maybe he should have. Okay.
Yeah. All right, let's leave that there. Let's talk about domestic, the shrinkage of the federal government. President Trump had his first big cabinet meeting. Who spoke more than any cabinet member? That was Elon Musk. The power dynamics.
Dressed in a T-shirt, by the way. Remember when Obama wore a tan suit and that was a big deal? Elon Musk is in a T-shirt and a
baseball
hat
cap,
and whatever. I mean, once again, it's sort of like, where's the protocol? Side note. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, the power dynamics seems
Very different.
Seems set.
Yeah. Oh, right now, yeah. I mean, you saw it in the cabinet meeting. You've seen it in the press conference. Trump is not standing back from letting Elon Musk have his moment. Now, why he's doing that, I'm not sure. Maybe he's busy doing other things. Maybe he just trusts Musk to do these things. But, every day, and for folks who watch whatever media you watch us, but what other media you're watching, you got to watch both sides of this because, you have Musk saying, I will police myself. I'll make sure there's no conflicts at all. And yet you read on and he's moving to take Verizon out of a contract tied to the FAA and give it to who? Starlink. That's his company. That would be a conflict. Maybe it's a good move. I don't know, but he shouldn't be the one doing it. So there's no semblance of remember the word emoluments? We used to talk about that 8 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it was.
The clause.
The clause that says you can't make money when you're in the presidency. That's just out the window. There are so many ways in which the folks tied here are making it. But the bottom line is Republicans don't care about it, and the people don't seem to care. They're fine with whatever Trump is doing. Sure.
We only have a few seconds left, but we have to mention Mayor Brandon Johnson will be going to D.C. to defend Sanctuary
Wednesday.
City.
Yeah.
He got some coaches.
He did. He's got Congress Jonathan Jackson helped coach him, who will be on my show this weekend, by the way. He also talked to some others, Lori Lightfoot, Rahm Emanuel, basically because hopefully he understands he's going to do this under oath, number one. Number two, the city is being sued by DOJ. Number three, Republican congressmen are not going to go easy on him because what he says under oath can be used against him in the lawsuit. So he should get all the coaching he can get. He's not a lawyer, so he does need that kind of coaching. He'll have an opening statement where he'll talk about what a great city Chicago is, and we'll hear that, but that's not what the Republicans want to hear. They're going to go after him in a tough way. He just needs to be careful in what he says because it could come back to haunt him in motions and evidence tied to the lawsuit against us, tied to Sanctuary City.
Marjorie Turner.
And they don't care what they want their question asked, and if you're not giving them exactly what they want, they're going to cut you off in seconds.
Slightly longer show for you Sunday morning.
Well, it's always the same length, Sally. I wish it was, but we've got Congressman Jonathan Jackson, as I said, who's going to talk about preparing the mayor and also the Ukraine situation. And Alderman Timmy Knutson of the 43rd Ward, he's going to talk about, that little bond that got passed by City Council this week. The mayor wanted, and people said, but we're not going to pay any principal for 20 years, and this is going to take forever. Well, that passed, and we're going to talk to Alderman Knutson, who voted against it, to find out how that happened and what it means.
All right, Paul, have a good one.
Thank you, guys. Have a good weekend.
You mentioned the event next week with Trump. We're going to have special coverage of the president's joint address to Congress and the Democratic response to next Tuesday night. Paul, you'll be back as our coverage begins at 8 o'clock.
I'm not leaving. I'm staying here now.
Oh, you're going to on the
sit
blue
here.
couch over there. Good idea. You can also, by the way, stream that on our WGN Plus app.